Hello students, and welcome back to the Lore of the Iron Kingdoms with me, Professor Caster. Today we're going to be discussing an overview of the Warjacks of the Protectorate of Menoth. And I imagine while we're discussing that, we could discuss how they have taken a corrupt cortex, or at least they called it a corrupt cortex, and made it blessed and useful for their own personal Warjacks, which I imagine some finagling of the faith probably helped that a lot, and probably a lot of blessing and holy water. But we will discuss that as we read the lore of Warjacks of the Protectorate. But before we begin, if you guys have checked into class, please like, subscribe, let me know how you're enjoying this. Please comment, that really does help the channel grow and helps us kind of navigate where we're going to be going next. Also, let your friends and fellow gamers know about this channel. Keep this steam train rolling, and as always, thank you Private Press for letting us read your fantastic lore. And let's begin. Warjacks of the Protectorate. While the Warjack has become a symbol of the Protectorate of Menoth's military might in the same way it is for other nations of the Iron Kingdoms, it was not always so. In the early years of the Protectorate, after the First Signaran Civil War, and the mass migration of Menites across the Black River to their newly founded home, Warjacks and all other mechanica were viewed with contempt by the faithful. A strict interpretation of the sole Menite faith doctrine indicated that all arcane and mechanical works were heretical. Those who sought to carve a new nation from the harsh desert did so through a combination of unshakable faith and backbreaking labor. According to priests, the human body was a gift from the Creator and should be sufficient to accomplish any task. As the building nation worked to expand its borders and build new towns and villages from the unforgiving environment, it did not take long for this stance to be challenged and eventually changed. Steam-powered jacks made possible feats of construction, agriculture, and ultimately war that would otherwise have been impossible. 2 decades after Protectorate was created, the nation began to allow the use of labor jacks. Steam jacks soon became a common sight in the great city of Seoul, and their strength increased the nation's progress exponentially. The clergy sought to reconcile their beliefs by conducting ritual purification over these machines and inscribing prayers drawn from the canon of the true law into their hulls. Impure they might be, but those flaws could be cleansed. Some clung to the older, stricter interpretations of the faith and viewed the adoption of machines as a slight against the Creator of man. Vehement distractors protested on the steps of the temple and preached their beliefs on street corners, some even going as far as to sabotage steamjacks. These acts came to a stop after Hierarch Luctine gave a direct order early in his reign that any who committed such destruction would be taken away by the screwtators and educated until they saw the error of their ways. This decree, along with the writs declaring the purified steamjacks were acceptable tool and weapons of the temple, conclusively ended the theological debate. And see that? That is how things go from corrupt to okay in religious text. If it's useful, I imagine they keep it. So, yay Protectorate for modernizing your army and infrastructure. Evolution of the Warjacks. Though the Protectorate of Menoth considered itself mostly independent from Signar after the First Signaran Civil War, the treaties ended that war contained troublesome restrictions. The most significant of these was the prohibition against the formation of a standing army and the manufacture of Warjacks. Some of these concessions had been made before the Protectorate found its strength, and soon the ruling priests discovered ways to avoid or subvert them. Such mandates came from mortal agencies. While the priesthood knew they must obey the higher authority, the temple must arm and protect itself against the unbelievers. Even then, the embers would one day bestoke the fires of the Great Crusade had begun to kindle. While the fielding a warjack for defenses was technically illegal, the sole Menites were allowed access to labor jacks deemed a fundamental necessity for the industrialization of the Protectorate. These opened the ways to create weapons of war that did not initially betray their function. For a time before the Protectorate developed its manufacturing capabilities, many of the earliest jacks were bought or donated from elsewhere, originating either the Signar or Kodor. In many cases, these machines were assembled in the Protectorate from finished parts built in other kingdoms. These parts included cortexes smuggled into the Protectorate, an especially valued resource that the Solminite would not be able to manufacture on their own for decades. As the Protectorate became more industrialized, it began to produce greater numbers of laborjacks. These machines were engineered with a dual purpose, able to perform work but also to fight. These jacks were outfitted with substantial layers of armor, their plates adorned with religious markings but built to deflect blows. The Protectorate were able to fool cursory inspections and pass these machines as simple laborjacks. Signaran officials who could not be fooled were bribed with gemstones unearthed among the desert sands. Menoths worked numerous hidden forges night and day to create weapons for the mighty iron automatons to wield in battle when the time was right. Aspects of these early designs, born out of necessity and secrecy, are still present in the Protectorate's modern warjacks. Early Protectorate warjacks were tested not against Signaran defenses, but against the Idrian tribes native to the wastes of the Bloodstone Marches. These battles were fought both to subjugate those who had not yet converted to the worship of the Creator, and to field test new weapons away from the prying eyes of Signar. The Jacks wielded crude iron maces and flails capable of inflicting horrendous damage despite their rudimentary nature. But over time, these weapons were improved to utilize other technologies and resources at the Protectorate's disposal. A number of innovations came with the discovery and refinement of a volatile oil into Menoth's Fury, highly flammable, and the oil proved to be abundant below the arid deserts and was viewed as a gift of the Creator. It was tapped and refined into great quantity and soon became one of the Protectorate's foremost weapons. Flamethrowers armed with these crudest Menoth's Fury were affixed to warjacks, though initial designs were nothing more than pipes and ignition systems attached to simple pumps. Later versions utilized fanning sprays, nozzles, which refined systems to propel blazing fluids further, and external lighters gave way to venting superheated heart fire directly into the fuel, and making their fire even more dangerous. And as Protectorate, they love fire, as we're all aware. Other weapons such as the Inferno Mace, wielded by the Crusaders' heavy warjacks, were likewise developed to utilize Menoth's Fury. The development and implementation of these new weapons became more prevalent, leading up to a Caspia Soul War. With the shackles of the Signaran mandates thrown off after the declaration of the Great Crusade, the Protectorates now developed such advances openly, paying no heed to the treaties that once bound them. So yeah, now they build them themselves. They don't have to borrow. They design and build however many flame-toting warjacks they want to field. And then we have a little side note here, as per usual. Protectorate warjack adornments. We have two, looks like. We have the prayer sigil. Many warjacks that have survived multiple engagements are decorated with intricately ornamented blessed sigils in which links of prayer cloth are attached. The cloth is covered with script containing passages from the true law. These blessings are believed to call Menoth's regard upon those fighting in its vicinity, and they ensure that his wrath falls on their enemies. Nice. Next one, ornamented menafix. Intricate menafixes are other common blessed adornments utilized by soldiers in the field to recognize warjacks that endure and perform particularly well in battle. Sometimes they are set with large gemstones or glass beads that refract sunlight to represent the sacred flame of the Creator. Yeah, so always nice that they use adornments. I know Kodor uses some stuff for its warjacks as well. Usually to represent certain battles they've been in, but that is neither here nor there. But let's continue. The fires of industry. Determined to compete with nations far larger than itself, the Protectorate has quickly built up several substantial industrial complexes and organizations. At the center of the warjack production are two groups, the Solminite Artificers and the Vassals of Menoth. The Solminite Artificers, I'm probably going to mispronounce that, but that's what I do. The Artificers see the Protectorate's war industry, including warjack foundries and forges, for weapons and armor. Indeed, creating and arming warjacks stands among the organization's highest priority. The Artificers include thousands of individual workers, from unskilled laborers performing simple tasks to exceptionally talented and specialized craftsmen. Due to their substantial body of engineered knowledge and many skilled metalworkers, the artificers often consult on matters beyond their main purview, including helping to draft plans for building new factories or other complex structures. In the shadows of the Tower of Judgment of the Factorium, a massive complex that serves as the central compound of the Solminite artificers, the sprawling metalwork is part temple and part foundry, housing dozens of forges and smelting furnaces, as well as all the apparatuses required for war. Hundreds of faithful Menites labor within, their efforts guided by priests subordinate to Viscos Arch Razik. The Factorium is the largest single manufacturing complex ever constructed by the Protectorate, and its operation are aided by smaller facilities producing machine parts and emmer. Many of the Protectorate's newly developed and mostly sophisticated Warjacks are assembled here. Despite the considerable skill of the artificers, their lives are regarded as expendable when compared to the necessity of the task to which they are assigned. Relentless production schedules are the norm, and those who fall behind in their duties suffer the lash or the rack, or are racked, as we will be getting into what a rack is in the future. Their lack of faith and conviction put on display for their fellows. It is not uncommon for artificers to work from before sunup to after sundown, sometimes collapsing from exhaustion or heat stroke. Yet these artificers know the importance of their role in the Creator's work, gladly giving their lives in the service of Menoth as readily as soldiers of the faithful sacrificing themselves on the field of battle. The vassals of Menoth were established to free the Protectorate from the reliance on smuggled or stolen foreign cortexes for Warjack production. The foundation of this order was timely and necessary, as sources for smuggled cortexes dried up when the Cadoran instituted tighter controls over its military assets. And I remember that they actually used to find ships leaving certain docks that had a bunch of cortexes in it, and Kodor, as we are aware, cortexes are a very valuable commodity. So I can see why they held on to that. The vassals are the only organization sanctioned to practice arcane magic within the Protectorate, and they can wield this power only to further the temple's mandate. This tightly controlled and closely watched order exists primarily to make cortexes for the Protectorate's Warjacks, but is also involved in constructing other necessary mechanica. The vassals of Menoth are the arcane mechanics of the Protectorate and are based out of Emmer in the House of Truth, a walled complex where initiates are brought and closely watched during training. Fully indoctrinated vassals are frequently sent elsewhere. Common destinations include the city of Laren, where they join the Northern Crusade, and the Factoriums near the Tower of Judgment, where they help the Solminite artificers produce vital weapons of war. In the recent decades, the Protectorates have been able to cultivate sufficient arcanists within its borders to fill the ranks of the vassals of Menoth. Prior to this, arcanists required for the creation of Warjack cortexes were abducted from neighboring lands and forced into servitude, and occasionally enslavement of foreign arcanists persists. Since such individuals can contribute useful lore and expertise, the disreputable smugglers visiting the black market around Dead Sands Bay on the Protectorate's coast still engage in the arcanist slave trade, enticing pirate crews to sell gifted captives with the promise of coin and jewel. Members of the Synod were so intent on production of Warjack-grade cortexes to the point that a single arcanist would fetch slavers enough coin to feed the entirety of a Mennonite village for a year. And whenever you usually kill arcanists who have that type of skill to make cortexes, the idea of getting a hold of one or having them just kind of pop up in your nation is probably pretty rare. So I can see why the price on these guys fetches so high in the Protectorate. Divine inspiration in the dawn of the Colossals. Warjacks remain at the fore of the armies of the Iron Kingdoms, but the recent development of modern Colossals has elevated the conflicts between nations to a new scale. Similar towering machines were once employed in the battles to drive out the Orgoth centuries ago, but the current generation is considerably more advanced and fearsome, if somewhat smaller in scale. Entire armies tremble at the sight of Colossals like the Judicator or the Revelator. For the Protectorate, the call to build new colossals came to the divine imperative. Receiving a vision from the impressive machines of the creator of man, the Harbinger of Menoth communicated dire potence to the Hierarch and the Synod of Viscos. By order of the Hierarch Severus, and under the direction of Viscos Arch Rezek, and the Soul Midnight Artificers, the foundry of the Sacred Flame was built east of Ember to span for months. Many Menites lost their lives to accidents or exhaustion during the rush to complete the towering complex. With fewer specialized arcane mechanica than the larger nations of Kodor or Signar, the Protectorates relied upon the unshakable faith to bestow upon them the divine inspiration required to create cortexes suitable for the colossal. With reliquaries and furiteries, I'm pretty sure I mispronounced that, containing the sacred remains of the great Menite priest or the fragment of holy relics, the artificers were able to channel divine energies into the cortexes and bestow upon them the sufficient awareness to control their great frames and an impressive array of weaponry. They select armaments that did not require precise targeting, allowing each cortex to fire those weapons with minimal thought while focusing on its attention on crushing foes. Like the Warjacks before them, Colossals have been vital continuation of the Great Crusade, already proving their worth against the faithless. Cloaked in fire and ash, the mighty machines of Protectorate marched forward to carry out the will of the Creator of man. While the nation's war industry is limited in comparison to its foes, it is no less capable, and every Menite pours his blood and sweat into building machines worthy of Menoth that will bridge the gap and see the Protectorates victorious. And losing a couple workers here and there to building a colossal is not that unheard of. Whenever we discussed the Kodoran colossals, they actually lost quite a bit of people because when you need a lot of coal for the foundries, a lot of families will freeze in the winter. So, but that will do us for the overview of the Protectorate Warjack lore. We'll discuss more of their Warjacks in the following courses, so stay tuned for that. Also, if you did make it to the end of this, shorter video, thank you. Please like, subscribe, comment, let me know how you're enjoying this. Let me know if you've ever had to go up against some Protectorate Warjacks, or if you like to use Protectorate Warjacks. Also, thank you so much for sharing and letting other of your friends and fellow gamers know about this channel. It does help the channel grow and keeps this steam train rolling. And thank you again, Private Press, for letting us read your fantastic lore. And as always, class dismissed.